What's up, you guys? It's Akemi from Akemi Kai Inner Beauty, and I like to talk about law of assumption and inner work. And I believe that we can improve our outer world by improving our inner world. So today I want to talk about some Neville Goddard foundations. So foundations of law of assumption to help you guys to better understand and clarify some of the techniques and the concepts so that you can have a better result in your self work. So let's talk about everything is you pushed out. It's a concept that can be really confusing for people. And I know it was confusing for me in the beginning too. So I kind of grappled with it. Like, what does that even mean? Everything is me pushed out. Can that really be true? Do people in my reality have their own like their own path and their own personality, and aren't I like co-creating with everybody? Like, it can be very confusing. And so I want to try to break down some of the concepts so that you don't feel like you're just like jumping into it and being delulu and like saying statements over and over, because that is not really what law of assumption is. Actually, it's not really being delulu. And I know you'll see people on TikTok talking about that, but that's not really what you're doing. And if you are just thinking, I'm just being delulu and like repeating these phrases over and over to myself that I don't really believe, then you're not doing it right. Like, you're not changing your assumptions at all, because your underlying assumption there is, this is bullshit and I'm just lying to myself and being delulu, and I don't really think it's going to work, so that it won't. Do you know what I'm saying? Okay. That's really why I created this channel, is because I kind of just want to clarify things. I feel like it was confusing for me when I was learning it, and I feel like there were a lot of creators on TikTok that had good intentions, but maybe they just were kind of spreading around things that they'd heard from other creators without going back to Neville Goddard and like really learning the foundations of what this even is, right? So I kind of want to do that. I kind of want to do that for anybody like me who really wants to understand it clearly so that you can get your head around this shift that you're trying to make. So I'm going to make a series on different concepts so that we can kind of work through them together. Feel free to put comments below the videos if you have questions, and it's possible, if your question's big enough, I can make a video on that topic that will benefit a lot more people. Okay, so don't be shy. Okay, so let's talk about everything is you pushed out. So what does that mean? And I'd like to start with an example, because we all have an example in our life that we're using, and it's easier to understand if you're like working on something in your life, and you can try to understand the concept through that thing you're working on. So let's talk about a kind of a sore point for a lot of people. So a lot of people get drawn to this journey, and they're kind of coming off like the twin flame journey, or manifesting an SP. What does that mean? Okay, for anybody who isn't familiar with the jargon that's kind of going around on TikTok, but what it basically means is you have some kind of woundedness in yourself where you're struggling in the area of personal relationships, like romantic relationships. Maybe you have an ex that you're not like at peace with that relationship ending, and you would like to rekindle it and fix it and like make it successful. Or you're fighting with somebody that you love, and you're like in a cold war, non-talking, they've blocked you. Or you just have a really bad dynamic with someone that you've been dating, and you feel like it's toxic and you need it to change, or it's going to end, this kind of stuff. You're in a marriage and things are rocky, and you're unsatisfied, and the person is talking to other people. You know, there are a lot of different scenarios that people go looking for support and help to try to fix, and they arrive at law of assumption because they're looking to to fix something inside themselves. Like they've come to a place inside themselves where they realize, like, I might be part of the problem. Like there might be something about me that needs to change, or something that needs to shift in order for me to start experiencing a better outcome in my relationship situations. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about what everything is you pushed out means if you are someone who is trying to heal a relationship with a specific person or a special person or someone that you love. Everything is you pushed out means that whatever the most painful, deeply painful dynamic is that you're experiencing with this other person, it's coming from inside you. That is what makes this work difficult and ultimately extremely transformative. For example, a lot of people coming from the twin flame kind of community, where they've been going to tarot readings a lot, trying to get answers, like, why is this person that I love, acting this way that's hurting me, or why are they distancing themselves from me, or how come they've blocked me, or why have they moved on with another person, like, am I ever going to be able to repair this relationship and get back together, or you're in a painful dynamic that feels like an anxious avoidant kind of dynamic, where you're always chasing the person and they're always avoiding you or running away from you or rejecting you, and you feel like you're not getting your needs met emotionally, and you're in a state of pain that's reinforcing like old trauma wounds from childhood. This is the kind of stuff that brings a lot of people to the law of assumption. So I want to deal with these things. I want to deal with this stuff as someone who's gone through all of this stuff myself, and I can really speak to it, and I feel like I can offer a lot of support. So let's break these things down. And law of assumption and everything is you pushed out means that the most painful feeling that you're experiencing with this person, it's coming from inside you and a part of you. So for example, you will hear people say, if that person is avoiding you or blocking you or rejecting you, then there is a part of you that you are avoiding, blocking off, and rejecting. I know this stuff is really hard to heal, hard to hear, but it is so healing when you do the inner work. So I want to support you in this, support you in understanding it, support you in getting to the root of it, and support you in transforming and shifting this area of your life so that you can have different experiences out there in your 3D reality. Okay, so you'll hear people talk about rejecting or avoiding a part of yourself. What does that mean? Well, let's think of some other material out there. Let's just use like inner family systems as a way of explaining it. When you went through trauma when you were a child, trauma is basically an experience you had that was shocking and emotionally painful and overwhelming to your nervous system, that at the age that you were unable to process at that time. So different people are more sensitive than other people. So some people will be traumatized by things that another person wouldn't be traumatized by, and it really doesn't matter. There's no judgment. All that matters is that you experienced these things that were overwhelming to your nervous system, and you couldn't process them at the time. So in order to cope at a young age, the human mind psyche nervous system does some pretty wild things in order to keep you going. And one of the things it does is like splits off a part of you at that age that went through that experience and kind of creates like a membrane. I call it a membrane because that's what I've experienced in doing the work of unpacking this stuff. Okay. It's like a membrane that sections off that content, that age you were, and the content of that experience that you had that you couldn't process at that time. And you kind of create this membrane there and you go forward with a blank slate. And in that way, you're able to keep going and cope at the age that you were with whatever you experienced that was just too much. Okay? When you get older, you can have many of these things. Many, depending on how many traumas you experienced. If you had a very traumatic life, and I mean like if you experienced a lot of traumatic experiences before the age of 7, because 7 is really when our nervous system and emotional body and stuff are formed. Things that happen before that age, you don't have the container or the maturity or the life experience context to process. So the way that you cope with those things is that you section them off and they are separated off from you in your psyche. So the more of those things that you go through, the more you will find when you're older that you're quite unemotional and quite numb. You can be very dissociated. You could be almost like a narcissistic personality where you don't really have empathy towards other people and you just kind of see other people as a means to some, to help you get to some goal you're trying to get to. Remember, these terms that are being thrown around all the time right now, they're not accurate, right? They're like, if somebody's a narcissist, really a narcissist, what is the ultimate narcissist? It's an infant. An infant is the ultimate narcissist. All it cares about is its own needs. It doesn't have any empathy for the mother. It doesn't care about anybody else at that age, right? So, in my opinion, a narcissist, a true narcissist, would be someone who actually had a fragment from that age, a trauma at that age that is causing them to act that way. Okay, so that's a side, kind of like a detour, but my point is, depending on how sensitive you are, you could be neurodivergent, you could be on the autism spectrum, you could be a highly sensitive person, you could be highly empathetic, you could have all these spiritual gifts, you could be born with psychic abilities open. There's all kinds of things, right? There's a lot of people that were extremely sensitive children that were born into families in the last couple generations before us that, they just experienced a lot of painful things from their parents or their grandparents or growing up or poverty or just different types of neglect or abuse or abandonment in relationships, and that caused them to fragment off these different parts of themselves at younger ages and create kind of a membrane in the psyche that's sectioning off the emotional content that's trapped from that trauma that happened that has not ever been processed. Okay? The goal of healing and the way to heal and what shadow work is that when you get triggered and that fragment of you is twanging by what experience is going on out there, instead of fighting it out with the person out there, you go home and you create some sacred space and you stay home that weekend and you go inward and you connect with that part of yourself and you connect with that age and you connect with that traumatic experience memory and you find a way in to process the emotional content that has not been processed. And by doing so, you can release those emotions, process the experience, allow that charge to come out of your nervous system, and integrate that broken up, fragmented part of you from a younger age back into your whole psyche. The whole process can be very destabilizing and take a bit of time the first time you do it. But after you've done it a bunch of times, you're a pro, and it's really easy, and you can do it really fast, and you're really good at it, and you know how to get yourself through it, and it just becomes easier every time you do it. And the more that you do it, the more integrated you become, the more of your own power you get back, and the more present you are if you were dissociated in the beginning, and the more fully feeling you are, the more like emotionally rich you are, because you have access to more of yourself and you're not walking around like this fragmented person. Okay. So that's where the inner work comes in. And so when they say everything is you pushed out and you're having a painful experience from, your childhood being triggered, like something happened that your dad left you, or your mom died, or you lost a friend or a family's, member, or a sibling, or, whatever it was. And you're re-experiencing that kind of painful dynamic out there in the 3D with somebody else. It's telling you have a fragment inside you that had a painful experience that you have not processed. That's what it means. It doesn't mean that person out there is an avoidant. It doesn't mean they're a narcissist. It doesn't mean they're abusive. It doesn't mean they're a jerk. You see, practicing the law of assumption means you stop living like a victim of the circumstances out there, and you realize that you are projecting all of your inner woundedness that is not resolved out there onto other people. And that's what you're seeing and experiencing when you're interacting with them. It requires incredible emotional maturity, incredible accountability, and bravery and courage to do this work in a world full of people that love to be right and blame everybody out there for their problems. Right? We live in a world, and we live in a society in the West where it's very fashionable to be pointing the finger at everybody else and saying that they're a narcissist and they're this and they're that, and to psychoanalyze everybody, right? We're very sophisticated in how we psychoanalyze everybody else, and we're right. There's nothing wrong with us. It's them that's the problem, right? But law of assumption is not that approach. Law of assumption is whatever I'm experiencing out there is a mirror reflection for me to see the parts of myself that I have not yet healed, that I have not yet integrated, the emotional content that I have held in me, stuffed down there that hasn't been processed, is exactly the emotional content that I'm experiencing in that painful dynamic out there. That painful dynamic out there is showing me, it's mirroring back to me that there is something in me that's feeling like that. And I need to go inside myself and process it and heal it in order for it to clear up out there. Does that make sense? If you have any questions about it, you can pop them in the comments below, and I can make more videos on this, especially on how to do this work by yourself or with someone else. And if you need support, you can do it with me. I have a certification in compassion key therapy. It's a hypnosis method. You can book sessions with me. I'm also a Chinese medicine doctor, so I've done a lot of this kind of work with acupuncture actually, but I'm not doing clinic practice right now, but I do the compassion key coaching, which is like hypnosis work, which works great with law of assumption. So yeah, that's always open to you. And if not, then just stick around and watch these videos and use it to help you in your process. Talk to you in the next one. Hi, it's Akemi from Akemi Kai Inner Beauty. Like and subscribe if you want to see more content, and feel free to leave a message in the comments if there's any topic that you want me to feature in an upcoming video. See you in there.